Hi, Laura.
Hi, Eric. This is actually the first time that somebody said hello to me first. So, very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we dive in, can you go ahead and give us a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Who I am. So, I am Eric Porras, and I am the global head of AI for Logitech. Hopefully, those of you who are seeing or hearing this are using either a Logitech camera or a keyboard or a mouse or a light or a microphone or a set of in-ear monitors to experience this session that we'll have today.
So, I'm not going to lie, your resume is pretty incredible. You are a four-time CMO. You are a founder. You are an executive at some of the biggest names in tech. But I want to start somewhere else. You trained in ninjutsu for 20 years. What does martial arts teach you that business school can't?
Good question. So, I went on that journey, maybe taking a step back. So I grew up in the 80s, right? So I was a child or born in the 70s, child of the 80s. And in that time we had, of course, ninjas were it was a thing. So Chuck Norris was a ninja, and seemingly everywhere you could go, there were ninjas. And so
I'm sorry,
I
you're
was
not mentioning the most important ninjas of all for children of
right.
the
There were
80s.
teenage also, right.
Yeah.
Teenage dirtbags and mutant ninja turtles. So and so in that way, I was interested. I had been interested in martial arts as a young child, and I said, I wonder if there's something that's actually real here. And so I bought books, and of course there was even a ninja magazine for a period of time. And it was right after college that I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to find the best dojo I can. This clearly has to be. There's a real thing here, and I did. And that was March of 1998 is when I first stepped into that dojo, and it became thus begat a lifelong pursuit. Right? It's the and I'll get to your question, which is, a lifelong pursuit of understanding something that I didn't understand before. And what I found, at least in the study of ninjutsu, people talk themselves about code ninjas, and so sometimes I have to describe, like, well, I'm not really a code ninja. I'm actually a ninja, and then we have to understand what that means. But what I find in ninjutsu, or in any study like this, and it reminds me a little bit of Stephen Pressfield, who just gave an interview with Andrew Huberman about this notion of turning pro, in the sense that, like, lives are on the line when it comes to martial art study, and that's not really something. I suppose it's something you can learn in business school, but not necessarily in the sense that you really do have someone's life in your hands, and you can take it or you can break it, so to speak. And so that's one thing in terms of, like, cherishing life, is certainly pretty important. The second one is that, like any pursuit, there will never you will never achieve. I don't believe you will ever achieve perfection. My high school band teacher, God bless him, he's still alive to this day, Ken Pollitt, he used to say, practice makes perfect, but it also makes perfect, or permanent rather. So strive for perfect practice to the extent to which you can. You will never achieve perfection. It's a goal that's outside of yourself, and the study of any particular discipline or art, there are layers of onions. It's an endless layer of onions. And so what I found really interesting about ninjutsu is that there is no end to it. There is no end to the study. It is a lifelong pursuit, whether or not I'm in a dojo today versus where I was 10 years ago. So it's a combination of cherishing life, the fact that it is this multi-dimensional onion, and then the third one I would say is that teaching is the best teacher. And so that's also something, right? Typically in a school environment, you are being taught to, and where when you achieve a certain level of proficiency, then you get to become, or you have the opportunity to become, an educator. When you become an educator, it's at that point at which you say to yourself, okay, do I really understand this art intrinsically, and can I express it extrinsically, either in thought, deed, action, motion, take your pick. And so I think that is a really important part of any study, of any discipline, is being able to teach it in addition to being able to learn it. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. And it actually, to go beyond business school, I can see a lot of those principles applying to how we are interacting with and gaining insights about working with AI itself. Uh, Especially, this teaching, you're learning by teaching, you're externalizing the way that you work and translating that into how you're communicating with this LLM, uh, in a way that you might not like. I come from a content discipline. I, we have to be able to give feedback and iterate, but not everybody works that way. And suddenly you're being challenged to work that way with this digital entity that is AI.
Well,
Um,
and Alora, that's another great point, which is giving and receiving feedback. And this is something I talk about with my kids, is that, feedback in school, or in a setting where there is not physicality involved, it's there's not a life or death. It's not a life or death decision. Um, but certainly in an injury situation, like you have to be responsible for your own thoughts, deeds, and actions, and also responsible for your training partner or training partners. And you also have to take feedback from your instructor in such a way that you don't do harm, or the line between where harm can exist and not. And so, while how that translates into where your question is going, is it's the first rule that I give to every person who I've ever had an opportunity to speak with about AI, which is, are you using AI to reflect on your own prompt before you initiate the prompt with AI? Which is to say, AI can be your best teacher. And so before doing anything, before the prompt sets, before you hit return, the question I always ask is, how can you use AI to improve itself before you actually implement anything with it? It's that whole measure twice, cut once, in some cases with an actual sword mentality.
yeah. And sometimes I ask my model, I want to accomplish this. What's a really good prompt that I can create that will get you to do this, or get another LLM to do this? So it's
No,
also like, how can I best format or phrase? And I mean, not to get too philosophical, but I think that's also a management skill, right? Is how can I communicate clearly with you to get the outcome that we both are trying to work toward?
and when you think about it, when you go beyond the prompt and you think about, I would talk about systems thinking, which
Yes.
is what is working with an LLM, but to your point, good human management skills. If you are a good human manager and you have a team of human beings who will work with you to achieve a specific objective, then you in theory should also be a good LLM manager, right? Human beings, are we deterministic? No, we are probabilistic creatures. So too are LLMs. And so, if we're good in one discipline, in theory, that discipline should translate pretty well in terms of how we interoperate with specifically how we interoperate with Gen AI. And I would even go a step further and to say that it is at this point, now that we're almost 3 years into this generative AI evolution, whether you call it a revolution or not is an open question. It is irresponsible, in my view, it is irresponsible not to work with at least one thought partner, maybe several. And what I mean by that is, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, it doesn't really matter. It is your responsibility in this next generation. We are this bridge generation, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we're using all of the capabilities available to us for us to become part of this augmented intelligence future.
You calling us, and I'm of your generation, a bridge generation, actually brings me to my next question perfectly. I love a segue. Let's talk about the 90s,
Unplanned
because
segue,
that,
by the way, unplanned.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, the 90s was another bridge moment for us. We went from analog to internet. Uh, you were producing webcasts for, no big deal, Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney. Uh, can you take us into that and talk about like what the energy around this was with webcasts, which was, I remember watching like simulcasts, uh, which was basically you would tune your TV in and your radio in at the same time. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm old enough to remember that. But
Sure.
how did people kind of wrap their minds around webcast? What was the energy like, and how did that shape your understanding of how new technology changes the way that people interact with it and changes the way that people see the world?
Yeah, so boy, great question. I'm feeling like, the Sean Evans interviewee in Hot Ones are dipping back into my past.
Oh
So,
man, now I really want some wings. All right, go ahead.
yeah, so of course the 90s, for those of us who lived through it and weren't just born in the 90s, it was a pretty crazy time. And it was a crazy time. I worked at an early internet consultancy called agency.com, and everyone at that point in the late 90s had some kind of side hustle. And so the side hustle that I had with one of my colleagues and still friends to this day, a gentleman named Matt Payton, he and I started a side gig called Outrageous Media. And Outrageous Media was, hey, the internet is new, it's interesting, it's exciting. What else could we do with it? And so one of Matt's former NYU professors had taken on a strategy role at a company that was trying to become the good side of Napster. So being able to do digital rights and artists and music and downloading music the right way. And so they had acquired the internet broadcast rights to Michael Jackson's concert in Munich, Germany, an Olympic Stadium. So what more can I give concert in Olympic Stadium in June of 1999? And
Wow.
so they had contacted, so Ron had contacted Matt 4 weeks before this concert was to take place, and they're like, "Hey, we just got we just won the internet broadcasting rights. We don't know what we're doing. So can you help us?" And so we said, "Sure, we could probably do that." And so we had, I mean, it's a long story that we have more time than this segment deserves, but we just figured it out. Like at that point, there were no rules in the sense that you just did the work and you just figured out what you needed to figure out. There was no manual for internet broadcasts at the time. So, okay, do I need to bring in a T1 into Olympic Stadium? How do I do that? Do I have an editing truck? Who's going to manage that editing truck? How quickly can we do the broadcast? Where is the broadcast going to be done? Who's going to be hosting it? Is it going to be Yahoo? Is it going to be MSN? Is it going to be MSN Europe, etc.? And we just figured it out. And what we did at that time was it wound up being that year we were either number one or number two behind Victoria's Secret. So again, those of you who don't recall, Victoria's Secret used to do their fashion show, and that was at the time the biggest simultaneous streaming event of the early web generations. And for those of you who are watching or listening, this was a postage stamp sized experience. So this is not high definition. This is not, I wouldn't even call it low definition. It's almost like the early MTV days of like Max Headroom with head moving in this way. But it was something new, and it was something new and exciting that was available to us as human beings. And it was also an early opportunity for there to be this shared worldwide experience simultaneously. So if we think about Jackson and McCartney and others that did these kinds of concerts or did the We Are the World concerts where they really were these pinnacle moments of shared experience, this was an early way to look at a shared digital experience in that time. So it was pretty exciting. I often say to people, because after that we were also invited to pitch Michael Jackson. So I'm one of the only people I know who has sat across the table from Michael Jackson delivering a PowerPoint presentation.
Oh my
And
God.
and this was when I was in the ripe old age of 24. So I felt like it was a little bit like an Orson Welles Citizen Kane moment. Like, how much better could it get than this? Or like how much, or I guess everything's downhill from here. But that in and of itself was a pretty unique experience too. And then that gave us the opportunity to do Paul McCartney's Return to the Cavern Club in Liverpool. We had jumbotrons outside. We were doing a broadcast. That broadcast was so popular that it did bring down MSN Europe. Like we couldn't have, the MSN could not have anticipated the interest in Paul McCartney's Return to the Cavern Club, which is where really the Beatles got started in Liverpool. And so that was also exciting in its own way.
And that uh, kind of launched, I mean, collectively with other experiences, really brought into focus the power of streaming media to begin with, right? I mean, we had the Napster thing where people, not me, never me, would
Never me. No,
download,
no, not me. Not
no,
me.
not me, copyright material. And then things changed now that Spotify came out, but it's kind of, I think it's that early days of, you've got your early adopters, your youthful adopters, like not me, Napster users. But then it becomes kind of just this everyday thing, right? It's just matter of fact. Yeah, I can access any song that I want to through streaming, um, and it's like, it was such an event back then, and now it's just not that big of a deal
Right
anymore.
now it's just you're absolutely right. Now it is just ordinary everyday experience where you or I right now could go stream live a concert like the experience I had. Okay, maybe because it was the Cavern Club, you'd have maybe the Wi-Fi wouldn't be as great. You'd have to figure out what kind of repeater you would want there as an individual. But yeah, in theory, you do have the ability to create that that streamable shared experience, and we just take it for granted now. And it was so not for granted back then when you just didn't have a streaming supercomputer in your hand, and so there
And
was a lot more infrastructure that was required to be able to achieve that kind of experience.
I feel like that transition is happening faster and faster with technology. Like, it was only what, 3 years ago that ChatGPT was released to the public, and everybody's was just like, their minds were blown. It was this novel experience. And then I feel like it was probably within 6 months, people were like, ChatGPT, why are you, the wonder about that became kind of like, well, now I'm poking holes in the performance and things like that, and also the questions. Of course, that hype curve happens, right? I mean, we're all familiar with the tech hype curve, but any of these AI LLM experiences, it feels like it's exciting at first, and then now we're gonna wrestle with it. And I'm curious where you think we are collectively. I know that consumer wise, it's becoming an everyday thing where people are kind of calling it a nuisance. But in terms of enterprise usage, where are we at?
Good question. So the first thing I would say is, and whether we talk about, right, is it, what stage of the Gartner hype cycle are we in?
Right.
Are we in the trough of disillusionment? I would argue no. It's more like we're still in this Burgess Shale moment, pre pre Gartner in terms of this Cambrian explosion of capabilities and possibilities. The My experience, though, to your point, or over the last 3 years, is that, and I've shared this before, but I think it's worth repeating. Maybe we, as a society, have been really taught by Google. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, there used to be a Yahoo search, and there was Bing, and there was Lycos, and there was Alta
Ask
Vista, and
Jeeves.
Ask
Nobody
Jeeves.
mess with Ask
Exactly.
Jeeves.
And so we, as a consciously and subconsciously, have been taught, oh, there's a box. I'm going to put my little vending machine worth of coin into the box. I'm going to ask my question, and I'm going to get a bunch of results, and I'm going to leave. And so the way many people came to AI was through the lens of search and thinking about it as an answering service as opposed
Yes.
to a conversational service. And the fact that, oh, the more conversation I give it, the more context I give it, the better off it is going to work with me as opposed to just providing an answer. And so
Hmm.
there was a phase of people, and I don't know what percentage it is, but there were certainly people who would approach Gen AI like they approach search, ask a question, get an answer, unsatisfied with the answer, not really understanding that you could say, you know what, heck with that. Give me version 2. Or, please throw out everything that we just did and try again. So this notion of try again is not really something necessarily that you didn't have that same experience. And
And to bring it
so,
back to feedback, right? We were talking about
bringing
feedback
it back to
before.
feedback.
Yeah.
Exactly. So therefore, there was some set of people who were trough of the disillusioned who said, you know what? It's kind of like search. I'm only going to use it. I'm going to very surface level use. And so in some cases, it's been a re-recruitment effort of people to say, hey, here's what you've been missing for the past year, for the past 2 years. And this goes back to my comment before about being a responsible AI citizen, and us again serving as this bridge generation. We absolutely should be infusing and bringing AI into every part, everywhere possible, because it is one click away, but it doesn't mean that the conversation that you have is just one conversation. It's almost like if we had this conversation, or if you or I were to meet each other for the first time, hi Laura,
Hi.
and that's it. Like
Right.
we don't do that as human beings, yet we've taken that approach, or many have taken that approach to Gen AI. And it is, thank goodness, and I think I've said this before too, but like, thank goodness Chat GPT is Chat GPT, not Answer GPT,
Mm-hmm.
because an
Yeah.
answer implies a start, a finite beginning and an end, whereas truly a chat is a conversation. And we do need to think about AI from a conversational partner perspective.
And again, segue. Oh, love it. Let's talk about conversations at work, because you had strong opinions about what productive conversations at work should look like, and what meetings should look like, and how they often get broken. This is, in your career, you were a successful CMO. Was there a specific meeting that made you think, this is broken and someone needs to fix meetings?
Sure. There were several instances. When we go into a meeting, in theory, right? Every meeting should have an agenda. They should start on time. They should end on time. There should be, if people are in a meeting, there should be active participation amongst all participants. If you have an agenda, the agenda itself should change from time to time, because otherwise, okay, Eric's going to speak at this point, so I can tune out. Laura's going to speak at this point, so I can tune out. Um, if I had to go back and think about, was there one particular meeting, I would say yes. It was in 2016 when we had at a company I was working with at the time, and part of our process was to have a quarterly business review internally, which required approximately 40% of the entirety of the company to spend up to a week's worth of time both preparing for a quarterly business review and then sitting through the quarterly business review from each department. And I, from my perspective at that time, I'm like, wow, we are spending we're spending an enormous amount of time, whether that be 44 cents of every dollar paid per employee to be in these meetings. Is this necessarily the best use of our time? Now, did the meeting organizer at that time have an agenda? Not really. Did the meeting start on time? No, it did not. Did the meeting end on time? No, it didn't. Was it a discussion meeting that was done, or a decision meeting that was done early in the morning or in the afternoon? No. So I got super frustrated with this notion of, wow, we're spending like our most precious commodity. You, the listener, right now, your most precious commodity is time. Now you can speed this conversation up, and you can play it at 1.5 speed, which is fine by me. That's okay,
Go for it.
and go for it. And so if we know we don't get that time back, so therefore, how do we optimize our experience in every moment that we have, and can we do that? Can we have that opportunity? So That was 2016. It took me a couple of years to maybe have the courage to try again, right? Better to try and fail than fail to try. And so finally in 2019, that was when I started meeting science and said, okay, I've been in one, I've been in one bad meeting too many. And even the founders of the company I was with at the time would be like, oh yeah, we're not really good at meetings. And, and so it was time. It was time to try and come up with a way in which we can understand the metadata of an individual or a team or a company's meetings, and then be able to provide both the diagnosis as well as be the doctor and the dispensary, and to say, okay, here's what ails you, and here are ways in which you can improve it, and here are not just statistically proven ways, but here are ways, and this is how I partnered with Professor Joseph Allen from the Center for Meeting Effectiveness, to come up with the heuristics associated with what makes a meeting great versus what makes it not so great. And then similarly, and then poof, what happened? COVID happened. Okay, well, what makes a Zoom meeting great versus what makes a Zoom meeting terrible? Probably, and the number one, so if we gave the number one AI tip before, which was ask AI to improve itself, the number two tip for those of you who are in Zoom meetings, now that we live in this hybrid world, is turn off your self view of your camera. Why? Because it's been proven in lab work that 10 to 30% of your cognitive load is spent staring at yourself. And so it's super important to not be staring at yourself. Just if you imagine going on a first date and there's a mirror behind you, like it's absurd. Like we don't do it in the real world, yet we're perfectly fine with staring at ourselves in a Zoom session or Teams or Meet. Again, don't just want to call it Zoom. Zoom did become the Kleenex during COVID. But that's tip number two. So if you take nothing away from this in terms of the meeting science that we were able to apply, which ultimately led to me selling meeting science to Logitech, it is turn off self view. Frame yourself, and then turn off self view.
I want to go back to talking about your company getting acquired by Logitech in a second, but in terms of, one of the most popular and ubiquitous forms of AI usage in business is now these meeting summaries and post meeting notes, and also I prefer, I personally love to use LLMs to set an agenda. Here's the goal for my meeting. I would like to measure out, it's a half-hour meeting, so let's create an agenda that's time effective. But in your opinion, do you think that this added AI feature on every meeting surface that we have is the best use, or does it improve meetings, do you think, or is it an add-on?
Well, so two things I'll say there, and one is it's human is in theory at the moment, until the overlords, the robotic overlords come and take us from figure. You are the judge and you're also the instigator, or rather I should say you're the instigator of AI and you're also the judge of AI. And so a meeting summary with action items will only be good for you if it is right for your workflow. I personally do believe that it is super beneficial. I turn them on for every one of the meetings that I host, in part because I have, and I learned this from Bryce Chalamel at Moderna, in part because I use it as a reflective time for me over the course of a week. I will take all of my meeting summaries and I will bring them into a conversation, either with a gem in Gemini or with my own custom GPT. And I will give myself some tips in terms of where was I good, bad, was there a time of day, were there were there conversations that I had that were difficult conversations that I didn't express in some way, shape, or form. So I use it as a self-diagnostic for myself, irrespective of whatever action items there were in a given meeting. So I think meeting summaries are super, super useful. I do want to go back to one thing that you said about your time for agenda preparation, which is you said a half an hour meeting. And that's also that's probably number two in terms of other than turn off self view, right? Which is if you work in Office 365 or if you work in Google, turn on speedy meetings in Google, because it will by default set all of your meetings to 25 minutes and 50 minutes. Why do we have half hour meetings or an hour meeting or an hour and a half meetings? because we, as a group, grew up on serialized television, and sitcoms were half an hour, and dramas were an hour, and news were an hour and a half. And
Hmm.
so, and when you set up your auto default, your calendar invite is set for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, what have you. There is a law, or unofficial law, which is your Parkinson's law, and it was written by in the Economist in the 50s, where Parkinson's law states that work will expand to the amount of time you give it. And so if you give a meeting 30 minutes, it will last 30 minutes. If you give a meeting 60 minutes, it will last 60 minutes. Instead, what you really want to do is you want to have meetings that are in, at least give people the opportunity to leave at 25 minutes. Give people the opportunity to leave at 50 minutes, such that they can prepare for their time in between meetings. Because a good meeting, you still need anywhere between 5 and 17 minutes of recovery to go from meeting to meeting. So this whole notion of back to, anyway, I don't want to deviate down the rabbit hole of meetings. In general, yes, meeting summaries are super useful, and they can be even more useful to you as the meeting organizer if you take all of those summaries in a given week and then use it as a moment for reflection and optimization for how do you approach meetings with these types of people or these types of topics in the future.
I could also see, as we get more into agentic AI, extending that into, okay, here are the action items from this meeting. Now, whatever tool you're using says, do you want me to start implementing some of these action items? Come up with a plan to implement these action items, and then, go carry that out on your
Well,
behalf.
a
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, so you could absolutely right now you could very easily create a I'll call it a pseudo agentic workflow that says, okay, take these action items. If Asana is your system of record for program and project management, Asana Monday, take your pick. Okay, now I want to take these and I want to put them into project X based on
Mhm.
keyword or title Y or participant Z, and then okay, now I want to assign it to those participants. And oh yeah, now let me kick off an agentic workflow that says, okay, based on my system instructions or my knowledge of the meeting itself, then come up with a plan. If not an implementation, then at least a
Right.
plan for how do I tackle these action items. 100%.
Amazing. So let's go from meeting science to Logitech. Uh, as a founder, this was your baby, and now you're handing it off, and you're going from founder into being an executive inside a global giant. What changes for you personally? Um, and what kind of insights have you taken from that experience?
I was very fortunate in that my first enterprise customer was Logitech. So what changed is that yeah, you are no longer it is somebody else's baby, but that's okay. Like if all boats rise, if because I say that like ideas are good, execution is great, distribution is king. We are on the surface area. Maybe a billion people per year, use our products and services in some way, shape, or form. And so, if I have an opportunity to bring what I've produced on my own to a larger audience, albeit perhaps in different contexts, it's not exactly meeting science as an entity doesn't exist anymore, but the fundamentals in terms of some of what we did programmatically for to help individuals as organizers as well as meeting attendees up their meeting game. Again, going back to that notion of time is the most precious commodity. Then that's a job well done and won. And so I think of it as you have to become as part of the acquired company, you have to understand the mores and folkways associated with what happens in an organization. I happened to, at the time, work for someone at Logitech, a gentleman named Philippe de Collins, who had been at Logitech for over 20 years. So he really understood the ins and outs of the business, and so I came into a warm and welcome reception as part of the acquisition. And then I was also tasked with, okay, now that you're here, now that you've just come in with this gem, are there other gems within the organization that we can take advantage of? And we would like you to take on that role of looking for other pockets of innovation where we can do something more interesting than perhaps we are today.
And that brings us to Gen AI and agentic AI. You've obviously been around tech your whole career. At what point did you point to AI and say, "Yeah, this is going to be my new path. This is where my career is headed"?
So it started, interestingly enough, I would say it started over 10 years ago. And so when I joined at the time a company called Rocket Fuel, that was took the company public. I was there, employee 100, like there were 128 of us when I joined. There were 1,200 of us when I left. We were a private company of 40 million in revenue. Then we were a public company of 400 million in revenue. The founder and CEO of Rocket Fuel, a gentleman by the name of George John, was an AI PhD out of Stanford. In fact, he was one of Sergey and Larry's classmates. He is legendary for turning down the job to be like employee number 4 at Google, but he's done okay. It's nothing wrong with that. But he also worked for NASA, and he also at the time had the most highly cited AI thesis paper in history. I think that has now since been eclipsed by, attention is all you need,
Right.
from like 2017 or 2018. But so my baptism in understanding the promise and potential of AI really took place in the formative years of like 2012 to 2015. And it never disappeared, albeit I went on a few different paths to understand. Like I wanted to understand the SaaS business, so I worked at Salesforce. I wanted to understand personalization at scale, so that was the role of Sunday Sky. And then I really wanted to go back to become a founder again. That was meeting science. And now at Logitech, okay, how can I create, like, what are ways in which we can create innovation around the human? So I led a software group called Smart Habits, which is available at smarthabits.logitech.com. Designed to, it's a little piece of software that it's the little mouse that roared. It's a little piece of software that helps you improve your wellness at your workday. People are chronically underhydrated. They don't take enough breaks. They don't rest their eyes. They don't treat themselves well at the desk, which is responsible for $1 trillion worth of musculoskeletal issues associated with sitting too long, or being at your desk too much, having terrible posture, etc. So 2023 comes around, or I should say 2022 comes around, and this thing I was late November of 2022
Mm-hmm.
when it launched, and so I had heard about it, and so I'm trying to remember which Supreme Court justice it was who said, "It's like, it's porn. I'll know it when I see it." This was like back in the 70s or so. There was a justice, a case that was associated with this, and the moment I had that first interaction, that first conversation, I was hooked. I'm like, this is going to change the world in some way, shape, or form. And so therefore, because of my role, because I had this semi-descriptive innovation role, I said to Philippe, I said, "Hey, I think there's really something here. I am going to invest as much of my time as you will allow me to be able to do this." And he said, "Great, go for it. Go with God." And so I did. And so I then became a vessel for understanding what was the, again, promise, potential, and peril of Gen AI. And I go back to what I was describing before at the start of our conversation about martial arts study, where until you become a teacher, you don't really know it. And so I had to both then teach myself and then say, okay, can I teach this? Can I teach a set of skills to another individual, to a team of people, to an entire business unit of people? And what will be what's the pre-intervention and post intervention? And so 2023 was really about 2023 into 2024 was about both taking on that dual role of, my daytime role was this innovation software role. My second daytime role was become an AI educator internally at Logitech. And so I wound up training 827 people over the course of 2024. And at that same time, I said to both Hanukkah at the time, who's our at that point was a new CEO, as well as our chief digital officer, I said, look, my observation now from working with 827 people is that we at Logitech have 100 people doing 1% of the AI job. Maybe it's time that there is at least one person that should be dedicated to doing this 100% of the time.
Hmm.
I've now, at this point, I've now built an institutional knowledge around what are the areas of opportunity and exploration beyond, beyond individual experimentation. And so then that begat this role that was fresh as of January 2025. And I'm so thankful and grateful that they gave me the nod to be able to do that. But the nod was also not entirely in a vacuum. There was a plan to say, okay, look, let's go from training individuals to teams to really thinking more broadly about what is the future of AI at Logitech. AI at Logitech is not new in the
Right.
sense that there's AI in this camera. Uh, is there's sound AI coming out of this microphone in our, especially in our video, in our Logitech for Business part of our business. Agentic AI happens all the time in those products, such that we can create this really, this cinematic, uh, uh, almost like directed like by Steven Spielberg type of experience, where if you're in a Logitech enabled conference room. But again, that's typically more on the hardware software side. It's not on the human beings. It's not on the 6,000 people that work at Logitech every day. How do they bring AI into their workflows? How do they bring AI into the conversation? How do they take AI to improve either the consistency by which they use it, the intensity in which they push work through it? Can they be creators? So can they create, whether that be custom GPTs or custom workflows that go beyond the scope of an individual, right? So it's not just, I'm not just learning AI for me. I now need to federate the knowledge that I've learned to others. So that's when I talk about creation, impact, and also the breadth of capabilities too. So are you working in Gemini? Are you thinking about building a Google Apps script that connects to, this is getting a little nerdy, but like a Google Apps script that connects to Vertex to pull Gemini in to summarize whatever it is, a ticket in some way, shape, or form. All of these capabilities exist now at the individual level. And so I don't know if we'll talk about like where do I see the future, but I definitely see a future where you, myself, anyone it's a SAS of one, and we'll
Hmm.
call it. We all have the opportunity to solve tiny frictions in our workday that we didn't have previously. Previously, we'd have to make a request to IT or scan the internet for software that could solve a particular problem. What is typical SaaS software? It is, user experience on top of data, and user experience itself, if that can be disintermediated by your own ability to solve a problem or solve a process problem that you have, and work with Gen AI as your thought and coding partner to do that, then you have an opportunity to create value for yourself, which then also can accrue to the company that you work with. That was a really long answer to your question, but
Oh man,
that's
you hit so many good points though. So first of all, the 800 some uh, coworkers that you were
mhm.
teaching about AI, were they all from technical backgrounds? Were they non-technical? Who are we? What's the profile of
Covered
most of these folks?
yeah, great question, Laura. It covered every part of the business. Not There was not a single part of the business that wasn't affected or used in some way, shape, or form. Everywhere from people and culture to finance to product management to folks within our gaming group. It really spanned the spectrum. And I have to give credit where credit is due, which is I had taken an AI mini MBA course from Section School, and
Yeah.
Section School was started by Scott Galloway, Greg Shove,
Who
and
was a guest on Humans of AI?
who was, I guess, on Humans of AI. And so what I did is that over that 6 week period, there were a bunch of guest speakers, thousands of slides. So I had all of this material. It was like all of these ingredients. And so I said, okay, based on my institutional knowledge, having been here at Logitech now for 2 years at that point, how do I take these ingredients and create the right recipe? Or what is a recipe? It's an algorithm. An algorithm is a set of instructions designed to achieve a specific outcome. So I created a recipe that I felt would be right, that would take the best of what my understanding of what I learned, also learning by doing at that time, to create a short enough summary, a short enough presentation about, again, how do you think about AI as an assistant, as a thought partner, as a creative strategist? How do you audit your workflows? Once you audit your workflows and say, okay, where are humans in the loop? Where can AI be now informed in the loop as well? And that application, it's systems thinking. It's not specific to any one LLM. It's not specific to any one modality of working with AI. It's thinking about how can I do what I do now better, smarter, maybe faster, and so that's how I was able to work with those 800 plus people, and in terms of their getting their understanding, getting them beyond surface level, getting going beyond from curious to creative.
As a fellow systems thinker, I can see the pattern of your interests converging to a point where it's like, oh, Eric is innately a man of this moment, right? Between, first of all, yes, that discipline. Also, from the ninjutsu, also you went into a marketing career, and that means you have to know how to tell a really good story and sell a really big idea to a lot of people. And then obviously you have a lot of interest in human performance and how AI and other technology can augment human performance. So yeah, obviously it's like, it seems obvious to me there's a convergence here. Um, but I know that not everybody is a systems thinker. And I guess my question to you is, to people who might not be systems thinkers, how can they cultivate those skills? Because I do believe that systems thinking is that skill, and I've heard feedback from lots of our own customers that this
Mm-hmm.
is the ultimate skill we need to cultivate in our future employees, in our college students, in our elementary school students, because that is going to be the way forward. What advice do you have?
So good question, and I think when it comes to systems thinking, there are two quotes that come to mind. The first is, if you haven't read Atomic Habits yet, you should,
James
because
Clear.
of course James Clear says, well, James Clear's quote in Atomic Habits, or which he's known for, is, we don't rise to the level of our training, we fall to our level of systems. And that, in fact, comes from, sorry, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our systems. That comes from a Greek poet, Archilochus, who coined the phrase originally. It was like, we don't rise to the level of expectations, we fall to our level of training. And so for me, and this is why I think what Greg, for instance, is doing at Section with Prof AI, what Josh is doing with Mindstone and others, like, you absolutely need to have that base level of AI proficiency where you understand role, context, task, output, boundaries, and reasoning. Those six things, again, I'll repeat them: role, context, task, output, boundaries, and reasoning, are the seed, the the DNA strand, the ATGC of AI. And if you understand that, and the only the only way you understand it is by doing it. So what would I do from that? If it were me, I would immediately, and I've done this before, I would immediately create, if you're a Gemini or a ChatGPT subscriber, I would immediately create a custom GPT or a gem that helps me in every prompt that I'm about. Again, going back to our beginning of our conversation, every prompt I'm about to use, before I do it, I give it to my gem. I give it to my custom GPT. I give it to my assistant in LogiQ, which is our own interface for people to be able to privately, securely, and safely work with any LLM really they want to. So we host GPT as well as Claude as well as Gemini in a surface area that we can control, where people feel private, safe, secure. No information goes outside. Anyway, the point of that is that at least across three systems, I have that as my first entry point into an AI conversation. So that's number one. Number two, so maybe that's, I don't know if that's number one in terms of priority. Number two, on my workspace here, and some of these things are very, so I'll call them strategic and very tactical. I learned this one from Greg. In fact, I'm speaking to you from this primary screen. My secondary screen over here is my AI screen. And in this screen, I have LogiQ, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, Notebook, and Sim Theory, which is invented by a couple of Aussies. And so this is my AI workspace. So I am I am 0 clicks away from the ability for me to interoperate easily with AI. The third thing I do is I have this, and I don't know whether we can see this on the screen. This is the only post-it note I have on my desk, and the post-it note is Ask AI. Because in my role, even at my level, I may start going down this garden path of, oh wait, I'm trying to sell something. Oh, let me think about it. Oh wait, wait a second. Duh, this is stupid. I should be able to speak my thoughts to my thought partner and have that thought partner pull those thoughts together into a narrative form that's more easy for me to work with. So this is you asked the question about what do you need to do now. You need to get trained. And again, this is not a this is not an ad for Prof AI necessarily, but Prof.ai is free for everyone. Everyone, like Greg's goal, as he's described, is like we want to get 1 million people into the AI class. That's a great way to get started. The second way to great way to get started is to make it easy. Make it easy for yourself to be, again, 1 click or no click access to your LLM of choice. The third way is to always have some kind of analog reminder which says, okay, if you've got a problem and if you've got some trouble, ask AI, use it as a thought partner immediately, and it will create and inspire novel answers that you perhaps didn't think of before.
When you're looking at organizational change, because these are fantastic for personal workflows, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody has access or is allowed to have access to these systems. But you're talking to leaders who are looking at getting people on board with the AI trained. What is a piece of advice you have for guiding their teams through this transformation?
Demonstrating proficiency, if not fluency, is probably the most important part, which is to say learning by doing or demonstrating by doing. It's one thing if a leader says, "Oh, we need to be AI enabled," and then you actually ask, "Okay, well, how have you used AI today to improve your work?" Well, I've got a team. It doesn't work like that. This be being the leader you want to, being the role model for what you want to inspire in others,
Mm-hmm.
is the best, and I think the only way it works. It has to work from the top down. That is why in our leadership team, everyone has been Prof AI certified, but maybe but one person, and that was they were on leave on holiday. Anyway, 85% of the organization is now Prof AI certified around the world, 46 countries, 174 cities. And that wasn't a mandate. It was just a really good suggestion. And it was a really good suggestion that was also backed by data driven outputs, which is to say that people who use AI are necessarily have more in their backlog that they're able to pull forward than
Mm-hmm.
those who do not. We have 112 AI champions around the company who I can statistically show that they are high performers in the other, what in terms of what I described before in terms of consistency, intensity, creation, impact, breadth, and certification. They are the creators and the impactors within their organizations. They are the ones who are not just building AI workflows for themselves, but building AI workflows for their community and for others. And so I think it's a combination. So going back to your question, it's a combination of, you have to lead from the front. You have to demonstrate from the front. If you are a leader now, you should require that every leadership meeting you have, there is an AI in action moment where you go around the room and you say, hey, how has AI affected you personally or professionally in the past week? It's something we do at Logitech. It's something I think every leadership team would be irresponsible at this point not to have that in every global huddle that we have. There's an AI in action moment where we're demonstrating somewhere across the world in any part of the organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be entirely technical. It can be. It could also be a process improvement. And so there's a moment within every single one of our global huddles now where there's an AI in action moment there as well. So you can only do this through transparent action, not just in thought and in not just thinking it to be true. You have to do it indeed in action. I hope that answered the question.
It very much did. And that's, I love how you're, you go from a high level, again, systems thinking to very tactical and practical, actionable things that we can do all do. I want to kind of dive into a little bit more of that leadership transformation, because there is still a lot of resistance. In fact, we did our own study, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but a significant percentage of employees admit to undermining AI strategies, either by not using AI, refusing to use AI, you know, just kind of sabotaging essentially an AI strategy by pushing back against it. Um, any thoughts? Because this is about fear, right? It's about leading people through fear, because you have a vision and a confidence in what this future can look like. Any advice about that?
Yeah, and I would say there it's, AI is not here to replace you. AI is here to accelerate you, and AI is here to accelerate. It's something I wrote about a couple of weeks ago, which is this notion of, if we go back to, again, my generation of watching Star Trek rather, and Star Wars,
Yeah.
Star Trek, Next Generation, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, etc. Sir Patrick Stewart, God bless him. There are episodes in which you see kids on the Enterprise running around in the hallways, or at their at Federation, where they're like discussing quantum physics, right? And they're, the age of my 11-year-old and my 15-year-old, two of my four kids. And why could they do that? They could do that because, well, they had a replicator to create food for them, so they didn't have to deal with that time. They had an autopilot, a really good autopilot in terms of, the ship computer, and so the amount of time they were able to invest in curiosity. And so I see that. Imagine, again, we're here on Earth at a finite amount of time. You have lots of projects that you want to do. Wouldn't you want to shift that timeline left, in terms of saying, oh, I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that. Oh, I really want to start on that book project. I really want to start on that, whatever project N could be. Stephen Pressfield, again, on Huberman Lab just this week, whenever this is displayed, so you can go back and look at the recording. He talks about, as a professional writer, he now writes 2 hours a day. He can't write any more than that. But he now has that amount of time. So anybody, in theory, has 2 hours a day to be a second professional, if the work you're doing is not enough for you, or you want to do more. And so therefore, wouldn't you want to bring AI into your workflow such that it gives you an opportunity to tackle that project that you never got started because you said you didn't have enough time? It all goes back to time. Are we time dilation machines, or are we time compression machines? And AI gives us the ability to compress time in such a way that it reduces these tiny frictions that are part of our everyday of humanity, and gives us the ability, I believe, to do the most inspiring and insightful work of our careers as human beings, careers being professional or personal. So I think it's that time dilation, or the time compression, the ability for us to bring projects forward in our human timeline, because we're only on this earth for a finite period of time. That much we know is true. We're here for a finite period of time. And so what do we want to do with that extra amount of time? Most recent studies, whether it be Federal Reserve of, I think it was actually St. Louis, NBER, and others, there's on average, people who use AI get about 26 minutes back to their day. Well, what can you use in that time? Well, maybe you want to do it in one of these projects. So maybe you don't have Stephen Pressfield's 2 hours of time. maybe you only have 26 minutes. Do you get enough sleep per day? Probably not. In the US, we are chronically sleep deprived. So could you reinvest that time in yourself? That time is probably worth it. Could you reinvest that time in that project that we described before? That time is probably worth it. So you are we talked about this before, you are the instigator as well as the judge. You have the opportunity to do with those 24 hours what you do. And AI is now the great accelerator to bring more projects forward on your life's timeline.
It occurred to me while you were talking about this that kids always ask me, I have two kids, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And I always say the ability to control time,
Hmm.
right? Because that just feels like the ultimate way to shape my life and pursue my curiosity, for example, or help others out. Um, but the other thing that occurred to me is that AI it is kind of a time machine. We haven't invented time machines yet, but this is a time machine in a way. Um, and we're all time travelers.
No, well, look, Laura, I think you're absolutely right. And right now, to me, working with AI, I've probably spent a little less time sleeping because my curiosity has grown. And so but I'm also at the point where I would probably call myself AI native at this point, going from, curious to competent to fluent to native. And so now I can actually reinvest that time again in my sleep and in my health, such that I can have such that I can both, because I believe in, lifespan and health span. And so, the more time I can put into my children. Okay, who wouldn't want an extra 26 minutes of time in their day to spend with their kids, to spend with their loved ones? So we have to think about. I do believe that you're right in terms of time being this essential currency, and if we bring AI into our lives, does it net enhance the finite amount of time that we have? If the answer is yes, then pursue it. If you think the answer is no, then that's okay too. You don't have to. There's nothing. There's no reason. There's nobody forcing you necessarily. Certainly, no one at Logitech. There is no mandate. There is no forced AI usage. It just makes a heck of a lot of sense. And if we believe it at the leadership team level, which we do, and at the individual level, which I think we do, then it's our responsibility to be pointed in the same direction. You don't want to be rowing against the tide. And if you do, then maybe, Logitech isn't right for you, at least in our case, or maybe the
Right.
company that you're with is not right for you. I just gave a guest lecture at a business school, and that was one of the last questions, which was, hey, our leadership isn't necessarily engaged in AI, and so, what advice do you have? And my advice that I had was, well, either change your leaders or change your job, because the genie is out of the bottle, and now is the moment of discovery and exploration. And so you want to have an opportunity to be able to be in a job that is rewarded and not either feared or punished.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eric. This was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
No, thank you. This is a great set of questions, Laura. Most commendable again in terms of going back in the history, and really forcing me to think. So thank you very much.
Thank you.